Oh, Angel, remember when we were watching them? Well, let me take off my sweater. Hold up. Let me start the intro. Let me start the intro. What is up, my dudes? Welcome to Spooky Stories with Friends. We're gonna be listening to some top 15 and chills, and we're gonna listen to some spooky stories. Mommy's gonna kill us. And we're also gonna answer some. We're gonna talk about it at the end, sort of like a podcast. Listen closely, kids. We might not die. What?
I took off my butt. You're hella loud.
I took off my butt. Alright, here we go. Hold up. Let me take off my sweater. I'm gonna invite America.
Yeah, wait. Don't send him hello. He gets pissed.
Alright, I'm gonna send him 3.
Yeah, send 3.
Well, first I have to get into the game, but...
Mama, hey Eddie, you do this to me too. You do this to me too.
America.
I'm not barely loading. You just freaking send me invites. America, hell yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna put it. Everybody get ready. Be quiet.
What the hell, maybe?
Thrown her a phone, which she was using to dial 911 on the passenger seat. She'd reached.
Well, actually, we can't. Hold up. Well, maybe we could, because my phone is like at 4 battery. I have an iPhone, so it drains really fast.
Do you access up to the charger?
Yeah, I have it hooked up to the charger. Tell me if you guys can still hear this. Wait, tell me if you guys can still hear this.
And held her while he
Can you still hear that?
driveway and dragged her
Yeah.
down. He let go.
Okay.
And slammed against
Could you well?
She had a concussion. He tried to
Look, it's hella silent.
screamed and rolled away. He ran over her foot and hand. Our neighbor came out of the house and screamed, which scared him away. My mother and brother went into hiding that night. Being on those stairs, certain my family was dead, and I was also about to die, was the scariest moment of my life. And having someone bang on the door and not answer when I'm screaming.
Oh yeah.
Having to open it thinking it was a killer on the other side. Creepiest thing ever. Number 2. I was born and raised in North Dakota. Back when I was in high school, a group of us would research murders that occurred out in the country. We would then go out, find the scenes, and film the exploration.
Oh no!
This was about 2 years before the Blair Witch. It was something to do when we got wasted on shitty beer and teenage bullshit.
Can you guys hear this?
Places to go and got really good at finding.
yeah, a little bit. It's like, it's not that loud though.
I have an idea.
Did you put the volume on?
Tree groves and old mailboxes.
Yeah, I have it back right here.
We were out looking when we spotted a tree
Can you hear it?
that was out of place and drove through the field and discovered an old house. It had padlocks on the
Okay,
outside
good.
doors that were
Alright.
knocked off pretty easily. We dispatched of them and entered the
But
kitchen.
you had a
There were 6 of us, all with flashlights. And
And you need to shut up.
the area fairly easy. The table was the
Okay, mommy.
and it was strange because of how normal it looked. It was set for a meal and not a bowl was out of place. Only thing was, we'd been in dozens of these houses and place settings were a first, especially on broken ones. As we investigated the area, we found the fridge had the disgusting remnants of a full stock and the cupboards were full of canned and dry foods. This was also a first. One guy found mail on the counter from early June 1978 and the other found a creepy-ass TV guide in the living room with UFOs on the cover. All the family photos were hanging up. Mom, Dad, bro, and sis in the 1970s glory. Furniture was dusty but in good condition. Closets were full. Everything was totally normal, which was super abnormal. As we dug around the house, we started to realize that the house had not been moved out of. It has been straight up abandoned. Imagine locking the door to your house and never coming back. That's the state this house was in. Complete unplanned departure. We went upstairs and split into 3 pairs to check out the 3 rooms. Ours was the closest, and obviously it was the younger boys' room. I can't describe what it looked like too well because almost right away from the hall we heard the most
Close the window on him.
terrifying scream I'd ever had the misfortune of hearing. We went running into the hallway and we were all yelling questions at each other at the same time. After a few seconds, the 2 screamers caught their breath and said, "You have to go in and see." Walking down the hall and through the doorway, I prayed I wouldn't act like a pussy in front of my friends. I shouldn't have been concerned because the others were just as scared as I was. The room itself opened to the left of the door frame and centered on the right side of the room was a queenish-sized bed. Propped up on pillows with all the blankets drawn to the waist, arms on the top of the blanket, and worst of all, turned slightly so looking at you straight in the eyes when you entered the room was a life-size porcelain doll.
Angel, what the heck? Angel, you freaking idiot!
I eyes lit up with our flashlights.
I hate you
Hey,
guys.
I'm not up
If
there.
the head had
Are
been
you so trash?
excuse it, but it was turned. Ready for when we walked in. Ready for 20 years. Hasty fucking exits were made as we moved down the stairs and got into the car. It was during the ride we started to get even more creeped out when we realized that even though the house had been abandoned, someone had taken the time to set up that goddamn doll.
Goes an ad.
Glad
Oh,
Febreze
jeez.
freshness neutralizes even the toughest.
Not packing food, clothes, or family photos, setting up the doll was one of the last things done in this house. We researched their names but got nothing. No tragic car accident, no grisly massacre, no extended family, just a tacky time capsule in the middle of nowhere. We found out that the county had taken possession of the land for non-payment of taxes, explaining the locks, but never tracked down any more information on what happened to them, or why they left that fucking doll. Number 1. A few years back I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had recently bought it and had it completely renovated. He put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. After moving in, I realized that there was something wrong with the lady next door. She was about 45 but looked much older. She would sit up all night listening to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to keep it down. She opened the door and I got a quick peek. Her walls had crosses painted all over them in different colors, and words like Jesus and angel scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, letting no light in at all. It was damp, yellow-stained 50-year-old carpets, dog shit and cockroaches everywhere. No dog, though. I asked her to keep it down. She just looked at me and shut the door, then she turned up the radio even louder. The next night I had my girlfriend staying over. I wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow of a person next to the bed looking at us sleeping. I think I'm hallucinating this, as I usually do in the dark when I'm sleepy, but then the shadow starts talking. It's my neighbor, and she's holding something in her hand. She broke in during the night, and who knows how long she stood there. You should lock your doors at night, she said, and walks out. The next morning I hear someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It's my neighbor talking to herself in tongue. She has a plastic bag in her hand with a rotting dead dog inside. It's hot as hell outside and I can smell death from the bag. At this point I'm scared shitless. She's obviously very insane.
Stop,
I
Dad.
go upstairs and knock on another person's door and ask what the hell is going on. The
It's
guy's
creepy
just as
story
good as me.
time.
Apparently she broke into the apartment one evening as well while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to get a snack, only to find her behind the couch staring at him holding a power drill. Now I know what was in her hand. At this stage, I'm basically pooping myself.
Oh my
I call the
God.
cops and they know about her. Apparently she is a violent schizophrenic and she hasn't taken her meds, but they can't force her or enter her apartment without her permission because she owns it. The only thing they can do is get her when she goes outside. I sit up for the next 2 days waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I hear her leave at 2 a.m. to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I call the cops. They have 3 cars in a special van over in less than 2 minutes. They restrain her,
America.
drive off into
Yeah.
an institution, and in less than a minute, it's like she was never there. I never scared her. Still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep. Got an idea for a topic?
America.
Comments.
Yeah.
Be sure to subscribe for future videos. Thanks for watching.
Okay, let's go do. You guys want to do solid gold again? Or normal squad?
Yeah, put another one. Put another. Hey. Put another
Yeah, I'm gonna start the
video.
next one.
The closer you get to home,
I started.
the more you know.
Wait, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. So, what did you guys think?
Good. The freaking old lady's hella weird.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the only story I heard.
What the power drill? Is somebody going for a snack?
Yeah, the last one was pretty messed up. The last one was pretty messed up. An old lady, and then like they didn't even know what was in her hand, and then like I looked, and there was a freaking power drill. Who knows what she was gonna do with that?
Bruh, but Chichi was making a freaking.
Oh, who's watching? Wait. So if somebody is watching the live stream, say who you are and you get a shout out. Somebody's watching, I know it.
It's me.
Are you watching, Angel? For reals?
No.
No, they left. Piece of crap. Stop broadcasting. Okay, here we go.
Commute is worth it. Your land is more than just what your house.
My butt.
Number 15. My friend and I were going to a party a few hours out of town, so we decided to stay at her family's holiday house about an hour south of the party. We arrived around mid-afternoon, and it was winter in a holiday town, so the area was completely empty, no other cars on the street. When we left for the party, I spent a moment deciding whether to pull the gate all the way closed. I had some trouble opening it when we arrived.
America, hurry up.
Late at night, I didn't want to be stuck outside. I decided to shut it for security. party was great. We got back to the house around 12:30 and the gate was open. I immediately felt on edge because not only did I know I'd
Hey, everybody
but
turn
I
back to
knew
normal.
it couldn't just blow open in the wind, but I didn't want to make a big deal, so I was vague when my friend asked if I shut it. We went inside and decided to make a snack. I was wandering through the house when suddenly my friend raced from the kitchen into the hallway and virtually tackled me to the ground. She was convinced she heard someone walking around outside. We tried to calm ourselves down, but we had no cell reception and there was no one else around. Over the next half an hour or so, we sat in the hallway paralyzed with fear. We heard footsteps outside and the back door being jimmied. We decided we had to leave, so we gathered everything and got ready to make a break for the car. Just as we were at the front door ready to leave, there was a huge bang in the backyard, and suddenly what sounded like hundreds of birds started screaming. We legged it to the car, ended up starting it with all of our stuff still on our laps. We hadn't even bothered to put it in the back seat. As we reversed out of the driveway, we saw someone running up the side of the house towards us. Sped the entire way home, and even once we got back to...
Oh my god, it's the real James Bond! Yo, fire, what do you want?
my place. Didn't sleep at all that night. Number 14. When I was younger, my family was extremely poor and lived in a very old mobile home on some land my grandpa owned. This piece of land was in a very small town out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and covered in woods. The town itself was your typical small country town where football was king and there was nothing to do but get drunk or high on the weekend. It was also the type of town, along with it being the early 90s, where one didn't typically have to...
Alright, what's up?
Fire.
Can I play with you guys?
Not right now.
We're ready after this round, okay? Just say be quiet because we're watching the videos again.
Oh,
Oh, cheese, Rick. I'm gonna start it up again. Oh, cheese, Rick.
Go.
Oh, cheese. Here we go.
Did you remember anything?
Alright, well, that's spooky.
worry about too much about locking their doors or setting an alarm.
What is
Our
life?
trailer was a 2-bedroom, and my parents, always putting us kids ahead of themselves, slept in the living room on a fold-out couch. My room was directly connected to it, and my sister's was down a hallway past the kitchen and bathroom at the other end of the trailer. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, my dad was woken up by the feeling that there was someone in the room. He looked around a bit and sees a large male figure sitting in the easy chair just feet from my bed. My dad quickly flipped on the light switch next to his bed and saw it was a neighbor from down the road named Carter. Carter was known to be a frequent drug user and was often in trouble with the law because of this. My dad asked him what the fuck he was doing here and told him to get out of the house. He responded, "I can't get out. The demons are chasing me and your house is the only safe one." My dad, who I should say is a fairly large and terrifying person, responded that if he didn't get out and get out quickly, that the house would be a lot less safe for him. "If I leave, they'll get me.
Oh my god.
Chasing me all night. If they catch me,
Angel.
I'm dead." My dad's response was there was no demons, but that if he didn't get the fuck out of the house, he'd be
Did they
dead.
laugh, man?
From what I've been told, since
I
I
know.
was asleep for this part, my mom also hurled a few threats, and while she may not be big,
Oh, I see the guys coming.
is
I see the guys coming.
I believe it was her anger that finally scared him off. My dad got up and locked the door and watched through the blinds as Carter decided, since he couldn't outrun the demons, he'd steal our old beater Suburban that my dad always left the keys in. He drove around
Oh my god.
the police, and it took him about that
I got him.
since the closest police station was about 20 or 30 minutes away. He finally brought it back and was arrested and taken to jail. He was deemed crazy and ended up locked in a mental institution.
Freak, he got me.
The scarier part is, for years after this, we'd get phone calls where all we'd hear is music lyrics that would always have lyrics like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." These calls lasted for years and followed us from house to house, even though
Where'd he go? Where'd he go?
had different numbers and would even be in different states. We always thought it was him sending us a message.
Show him.
When I was about 12, I later found out it was around that time that Carter thought the best thing he could do for himself was soak
Anybody got any bandages?
and set himself on fire.
Huh?
Number 3.
Anybody got any bandages?
When I was younger, I
I
had
only
an
got my
imaginary friend who lived in this massive antique dresser. We'd chill out, and I vividly remember him telling me
No, I only have 24 bullets. No joke.
no recollection about what they actually were. I remember one day talking to my parents about it. Dad traveled quite a bit, so he wasn't up to date with what I was into, and I started telling him about my dresser buddy. He wanted to know his name. It was something innocent like Peter or Patrick, but I can still see him going white in the face. I drew Peter or Patrick out for him, and the very next day, him and my uncle took that dresser and burned it. It wasn't until a few years later that I found out my dad's little brother, my uncle, also had the same friend with the same name who lived in the same antique dresser. After a few months of typical imaginary friend shit, my uncle started having night terrors and couldn't sleep because of Peter or Patrick. It got so bad they had to move his room before
that killed somebody.
Get back to normal.
I don't remember shooting anybody.
I was visiting family for
What the heck? Did you guys see that?
Los Angeles. This was about
Did you guys see that?
ago. I was heading to the bathroom on the second floor of my aunt's house when I saw my cousin April on the stairs.
Jeez.
April was 4 and very animated. She was busy making funny faces while sitting on the stairs. I asked her what she was doing. She
It was trash.
the lady with the braid. I looked around. There was no one else but us. I asked, "Where is the lady, April?" She pointed to a beam running parallel to the stairwell. I asked April, "What is the lady doing?" She said, "Making funny faces." I smiled and started walking up the stairs again when April said something that stopped me in my tracks. Her braids is around her neck. I turned back and asked April to repeat herself. April pointed, "The lady is hanging by her braid. She's making funny faces." Then April started making a face when I realized it was someone gasping for air. Number 11. I once worked on an Indian reservation, and it's late at night in South Dakota.
Nice.
Some friends and I are driving. One of them is native, and we are discussing folk tales of the area. Suddenly, I see a white light running towards the road across the plains, and my friend steps on the brakes. "You're doing that because you saw it too, right?" "Yup." We pull up to the area, and there is nothing there. I have goosebumps all the way back
Are we
to
leaving?
staying. That night, I have awful dreams about native warriors trying to destroy New York City, and then I wake up with something breathing in my ear, whispering to me. I scream my friend's name, and he
Alright, let's go.
grabs me and tells me it's okay. I fall back into the same dream over and over again. I keep trying to change the outcome. The next day, my friend told me when he woke up and saw me screaming, a massive shadow was above me. The tall man, not Slenderman. This guy is different. My friend didn't want to tell me he saw it because he knew it would freak me out even more. Was afraid to sleep for weeks, smudged the crap out of my room, put sage on the window still, and hung up mad dream catchers. Shit was scary but also kind of funny. I think they had fun messing with the white girl. Number 10. This happened to a friend of mine. She told me about it a year or so ago. We'll call her Minji. Minji is in her late 20s and works as an English tutor in South Korea. One evening, a few years ago, she was tutoring a high school boy. They were up studying pretty late and the buses stopped running. Being a long way from his house, the boy asked if he could crash on her floor overnight and get the first bus the next morning. Minji was very reluctant because inviting a teenage male student to stay the night didn't sound like a great idea, but he was begging her and eventually she got relented. They went back to her one-room apartment, and she got into the bed while he laid a blanket out on the floor, and they both fell asleep. A few hours later, at maybe 2 a.m., the boy wakes Minji up. "I'm really hungry," he says. "Let's go get some food." Minji opens her eyes and looks up at him in disbelief. "Food? Now? It's 2 a.m. Go back to bed." But the student insists. "No, I'm so hungry. Let's eat something now." She tells him that there's some ramen in the kitchen and he can fix himself.
Where?
This doesn't satisfy him. He doesn't want ramen. There's a 24-hour place just down
Where?
Still there. Eventually,
Oh, I see him.
after several minutes of persuasion, the boy gets Minji to come with him.
I'm sorry, how you doing?
They leave the apartment and head out, and as soon as they're on the street, the boy turns to Minji and says, "I'm not hungry. I woke up in the middle of the night and looked under your bed. There's a man sleeping there." They call the police and discover that a homeless man had been living in Minji's apartment, sleeping under her bed
Ah!
for 2
Oh,
months.
jeez.
The boy
Oh, jeez,
saw
Rick.
him because he was lying on the floor, so had a clear view
Let's go.
of the bed. The police arrested him.
Hey, did you see that?
Thankfully, there were no other issues, but that's by far the
Ah.
craziest thing that's ever happened to anyone I know. Number 9. When I was a child, we would frequently get calls for a woman named Tanya. Didn't seem like a big deal. She had the same last name as us, although it's quite a common one around here. When we moved across the city and phone books stopped being the go-to for finding someone's number, the calls for Tanya gradually stopped. Those days seemed to have ended and we carried on forgetting about the
Squatter solid gold.
Tanya. It was about 4 years ago that she...
Squatter solid gold.
Oh, sounds cool. It's fire.
It's all good.
Who you at, Daddy?
Okay,
She
put it
popped
right
up in our lives again. I was driving home from work one afternoon and was greeted by a pretty grisly car wreck that turned to my house. 2 cars had collided and one had wrapped itself around the signage pole that had house numbers and directions on it, one of which was my house number. Several days later we get a call from the police. They asked if Tanya was at this residence. Her car was found wrapped around a pole down the street from my house, and she was nowhere to be found at the accident site. Haven't heard anything about her since. Number 8. My mom had 3 kids. There's me, the youngest, and my older brother. But before either of us were born, there was Jonathan. He was a sweet little boy, big blue eyes, known for accidentally repeating dad's swears in church. Wholesome kid, great in school, active outside. When he was almost 6, he was riding his bike and fell and hit his head on a rock. He got up and said he felt fine. My mom found him the next morning in his bed when she tried to wake him up to get to kindergarten. One pupil dilated and the other not. She got him airlifted to the nearest hospital. During this time, Jonathan's best friend Nick was sitting at the breakfast table eating cereal. Nick suddenly gets up from the table and goes to the door. When his mom asks him what's up, Nick says Johnny was calling for him. You see, Nick and Johnny lived on separate blocks, but they weren't allowed to cross the street without a parent yet because they were still fairly young. But they lived close enough to call to one another to come out to talk at their respective street corners. So Nick goes to the street corner while his mother receives a call from mine that Johnny was declared dead in the hospital. Idle brain aneurysm that was triggered by the fall. Nick's mom can hardly handle the news and is now wondering where her son went. But Nick comes back a few minutes later and says that he heard Johnny calling to him, but he wasn't at the street corner when he looked. Then sits down to continue to eat his cereal. When his mom asks Nick what Johnny was saying,
I don't even see him, Angel. Jeez, Christ.
Number 7. Before my family and I moved to another state, my father went
I'm turning into Jeremiah
to check on the progress of our new house, which was still being built. My father was there for a few days and was staying at some crappy Motel 6 in a shady area of town. His room was the last room at the end of the hallway on the top floor. In the middle of the night, on the last night he was in town, he was woken by the phone ringing in his room. He groggily answers. It was the front desk, and they say something along the lines of, "Sorry to wake you, but we've been receiving a couple of reports about rooms being broken into and some stuff being stolen. We are calling to make sure
Fire, watch out!
doors and are safe." My father replies that he is fine and hangs up. He decides to go double check that he locked the door. As he sits up in bed, he notices that the door to his room is ajar. Being spooked, he continuously checks the room and finds out that nothing is missing and no one else is in the room. He creeps to the door and peeks out. Sitting right outside his room on the windowsill is his shaving kit. Creeped out of his mind, he quickly grabs it and locks the door. After he calms down a bit, he calls the front desk and says, "Hey, you just called me about the break-ins around the hotel, and I just wanted to report that my room was just broken into when I was sleeping. Nothing is stolen, and I am fine. Figured you would like to know." The front desk replies, "You must have been mistaken. We never called your room, and we haven't received
you freaking
break-ins." Number 6. My wife's mother passed away in 2003 from cancer. After the funeral, family and friends gathered at her house for a final celebration of her life. The gathering went late into the evening.
I have a large bag.
My son, 3 at the time, needed to go
No, I don't. Never mind.
I walked him up the stairs to where he would sleep. The room that my mother-in-law passed away in was upstairs, and straight down the hallway as you reach the top of the landing. My son and I walked upstairs together with me holding his hand. As we nearly reached the top of the stairs, my son stopped and wouldn't move. at the point which he could just see down the hallway. He was staring down the hall.
Oh my god! Help me!
Down the hall to an open doorway to a completely dark bedroom.
I'm down.
He just
Angel,
stared
it's up to
and
you.
would not move any further.
How can I have some soda?
The light scares me. I
Give
looked
it.
again down the hallway where he was staring into darkness. Buddy, you see?
He was up there.
Yes, Daddy, it scares me. I promptly picked him up and went back downstairs. To this
He's coming behind you, Angel.
on the back of my neck when I think about it. Number 5. A few years ago, my brother would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. every night. He would answer and
Angel, don't do it.
hello,
Angel, you idiot.
noise, like static mixed with screams. He changed his cell number after a month of this and it stopped. Then after a week or so, it began again. The exact same noise, exact same time. Finally, one day, he decided to back dial the call. It was an old man
Angel, wait. Angel, move forward. Never mind.
about. Still, the call persisted. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times. No messages were
Crap.
left. He decided to say screw it, ended his contract with his phone company, switched to a new one, and then got a new number. You guessed it. The screaming static calls continued after a short delay. By
Oh,
this
baby.
time, he was terrified every night. Unsure why this was happening, he backdialed the number again and got a different person. Around this time, he lost his job and his phone. The call stopped, of course. His phone was disconnected now. So one day, my mom asked me to listen to the message.
We're going where I want, little kids. So, eat it.
We showed my brother, he was freaking out. He backdialed the number again, and it said the number was disconnected this time. Never heard from it.
Listen to this. Oh, my fart. Oh, my mic smells like crap.
Okay, put the video here.
I farted into my mic, Angel.
What are we listening to?
But again after that.
Oh,
Number
jeez.
4. My grandfather told me this story about how one time he was sitting in a chair in front of the house when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside the house. The thing is, my grandmother passed away a few years ago before that, but he told me the voice was so pressing
Trust me, we need to go there.
inside the house. And as soon as he got inside, he
Yes, I said we go there.
behind him and turned around to see that the chair he was sitting on moments ago had been crushed by a cast iron gutter that fell on it. If he didn't come inside the house, he
Eat,
probably would
Dad,
have been seriously
eat,
injured.
yeah.
Number 3. Before I was born, my father and mother had a small apartment together. My mother told me once she went in the basement and saw a woman standing at the base of the steps, just staring up at her, and then she just vanished. Then my father was in the shower, one with a sliding glass door that you can barely make out what's on the other side, when a large figure walked up to the other side of the glass and banged on it, making it blow out. My mother found him in the fetal position in the shower, covered in glass, and no one was around. The last one made them move out. He confirmed it happened, but doesn't like to talk about it. He's a relatively tough dude, so for something to scare him that much means a lot. Somewhere in between those two occurrences, they came home to find absolutely everything moved over about an inch. They realized this because they're not very good at dusting. Number 2. Around the time I was 19, I was deployed to Iraq. My unit worked with bombs, and honestly, I didn't know how I made it home intact.
Allah Akbar.
Halfway through my tour, the Red Cross notified my unit that my father was terminally ill. Within a week, I was on a plane to the States. Now, my dad being ill was something I had grown used to. He was strong though, and I never expected to actually lose him. I lost my mother when I was 7, and my father's lungs had collapsed shortly before then. He was on oxygen and needed a wheelchair to go anywhere. Medication by the handfuls were needed every few hours. He gained weight from limited movement, developed diabetes, and had already beaten cancer once. I never expected to lose him, and wasn't the type to ever give up. I arrive home.
You guys ready to go?
Hospital, and he assures me he's fine and they're over.
We have to go to this.
I visit him every
Right there, right there.
but he tells me he'll be fine by the time I get home for good. I reluctantly go back overseas. I call the hospital whenever
We can all get some, what's it called, material, so enjoy it.
my deployment finishes and he kept his promise. He comes home from the hospital because he says he doesn't want to die there. He gets worse and goes back. The family all visits, but we know he isn't improving. One day, I'm at home and the phone rings. It's an unknown number, so I don't answer. It goes to the answering machine, and a very raspy voice mumbles, "Call the hospital." It's my dad. I grab the phone, but he had already hung up. So I call.
Where you going?
They tell me he's been
Cool, bring me
intubated for the
to
past
get-
couple hours.
Why not?
He's starting to go into cardiac arrest. He's non-responsive, and we need to come to say our goodbyes.
Okay,
I argue that he just called me, and she says that's not possible. They've been working on him for some time now. I hung up and told my family the news. My sister and I stared at the answering machine. We played the tape again and again. This was the last time I heard my father's voice. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in the paranormal or ghosts, and I cannot come up with any logical explanation. I still get watery-eyed thinking about it. Number 1. It was near Halloween time
Crazy.
when my friends and I were telling ghost stories. My friend said she was going to tell a story about her parents' first date. She said she didn't like telling the story since it was actually true, but we prodded her on. To cut to the chase, the parents had spent a nice, if awkward, first date.
I just farted again.
The time they would have
This one hurt my butthole.
the male in the situation, my friend's dad,
Where's the launch pod?
suggested they go for a
Where's the launch pod?
at Provo Canyon. He apparently knew the place since he had done a fair amount of rock climbing in the area. So the two drove up the mountain of the canyon, got out of their car,
Allah Akbar.
started hiking under just the light of the stars, since it was a new moon. At some point, the male starts getting a bad feeling, since the pathway ahead, which would pass under some trees, would be dark, and because it was getting to be quite late, he ignores the feeling and presses on. In later rehearsings of the story, the female would say that she had the same feeling at what was probably the same time, though she didn't know the trail like he did. A minute later, the feeling comes back to the male. He ignored it again and started walking a bit of the way into the trees when his foot hit something soft in the middle of the path. Under the trees, it was too dark to see what the soft thing was, and the feeling came back stronger than ever. Instead of finding out what his foot had bumped into, he and the female both agreed to hightail it out of there. Years later, after being married for some time, they were watching an interview with serial killer Ted Bundy. In response to a question asking him to describe the time he felt the closest to being caught, he explained about the night he lured a girl into Provo Canyon and had just killed her when he
What the
heard
heck?
some people
Wait for me.
coming up the trail. He explained how he just hid in the trees just in time, only to watch some guy walk right into the body, and for some reason
Where are they?
just
Where are they? I don't even know where they are.
walk away.
You guys don't even see me
For
anything.
a top 15 list, be sure to leave it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe.
Oh my god, I can see them.
Thanks for watching.
Allah Akbar. I can hardly see them.
Number 15. I moved to my dad's when I was 10 and didn't know anyone in the area except for the family my dad was friends with.
Watch out, watch out.
Single mom with 3 kids. Luckily, there was a girl a couple years older,
Oh, I got killed.
12 at the time I met her, and we got
Allah Akbar.
for a little over a couple years. We weren't close, but we ended up having the same friends.
Oh, jeez.
My friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend,
Build some stairs, build stairs.
which is where this gets terrifying and sad. Her
Build another wall. Build another wall. Build another wall right there as a decoy.
know her
Right
family.
behind you, watch out.
She found out her sister was in a mental
Dude, you need to watch out.
and was let out recently. The night Rob is hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door.
Allah Akbar.
Thought it was just her mom. She knocks a certain way when coming in and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there, and he took off through the window to his house down the road.
Eric, there's
He
a
never
treasure
thought
chest.
twice about it.
Angel, watch out! They're about to shoot you.
The sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to the sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where I don't know details, and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas, decapitated her, and left her body naked in a bathtub, hid her head. They had to look through the presents, and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. Number 14. I have a few paranormal events that happened all throughout my life. Most of them are pretty tame, but there is
Oh my god!
and still sticks with me today.
That was so sick, mommy.
I was ending my freshman year at college. I had lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and pretty much had a great experience altogether. Towards the end of my last semester, something seemed different in the hallway of the dorms. We were all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms would give you this massive feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stress of the finals approaching, but it just felt off.
Oh
One
shit.
night after studying, I decided to hit the shower so I can just wake up and make my way to class in a few hours. I'm all alone in the bathroom, gearing up to go shower.
What?
Throw my change of clothes on the right side sink, so that way I can reach around the stall and
You know
grab
like
them.
this one.
Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror,
It might be
and I can
squad.
see in the distance something shimmering inside the shower stall. As I look at it, I notice that it gets slowly
It is squad,
closer,
Nathan.
like it's jumping from the furthermost layer to the next layer closer. I'm kind of unsettled, but I don't think much of it other than me coming down from a massive Red Bull and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. As it gets closer, I can start making out details, but nothing vivid or striking. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. At this point, I'm freaking out hardcore since this thing is getting closer in the mirror, and I'm pretty much frozen to this one spot. As it gets to the fourth layer, I get the closest look at this thing I'll ever get, and I regret every minute of it. It wasn't hair, but some kind of long flowing veil. You could see through it partially, but from the torso down, it was just solid black. And the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time, it was so far removed. There were eyes. They were black, but definitely glowing somehow. I only saw this for maybe a second at the most, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then the lights cut out, and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom, so I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door, but it won't budge. And then this intense smell of blood hits me out of nowhere, and that's all I remember. I woke up later in the hospital. From what my RA claims, he was on his way to use
What
the
the heck,
bathroom sometime
fired?
after this happened, where he
Oh,
found me in the
that's
shower
shot.
stall with my shirt covered in blood from a massive nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened, and according to him, all I could respond with was "it saw me," and I started freaking out. So he calls an ambulance, and they get me to a hospital. All the while, I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me to calm me down. I'm coming to around the time my parents show up. Worried sick, of course.
Okay, where's Fire? I'm gonna go get him.
What happened, and
Fire, I'm gonna try to go get you.
doctors, they believe I had a seizure. However, they ran CAT scans soon after I was cooperative enough to do so, and found no sign of any seizure occurring. Not to mention, epilepsy does not run in my family at all. To this day, I still can't bring myself to look into a mirror for more than a minute, and just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period of time will cause me to break down. I've been to therapy going on 3 years because of this, and I've talked to countless religious leaders who, besides giving me the general, well, you should
Angel, help me out, help me out, help me out.
times like these,
Oh my.
don't
Oh my god, Angel!
anything demonic or evil. And the strangest thing is that before the accident, there were no actual claims of activity in those dorms. And since I left, there hasn't been any either. It was just this one isolated incident. Number 13. I was once featured in a St. Jude's survival newsletter when I was about 5 years old in the early 90s. This newsletter went out across across the country and apparently into Canada.
Yeah, I told
There
Nick
was
to
this
invite
guy
me.
named Mitchell
Is
that
there any
called
new
my
fire?
family up out of the blue because he had read my cancer survival story. He lives somewhere in Canada and claimed to be this big-time Christian and wanted to talk to me about God and prayer. My mom let him talk to me for whatever reason, and the guy actually just wanted to talk to me about Elf. This Canadian dude named Mitchell was obsessed with Elf and somehow got a hold of our mailing address and sent me tons of Elf merchandise, coloring books, pencils, Elf everything. For some reason, my parents let him talk to me whenever he would call because they bought into his God stuff and liked how he sent me Elf crap. This went on and off for about a year until he asked me if I had ever heard of John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer who dressed as Pogo the Clown and lured boys to his house where they were tortured before being murdered and buried in his crawl space. He told me who he was and that he had escaped him when Gacy tried kidnapping him when he was a kid. He told me I should tell my parents that they shouldn't trust strangers because you never know who they could really be talking to. I remember he didn't sound menacing when he said it, just matter of fact. Of course, my parents freaked when I told them, and they changed numbers and called the police. They never really did anything, since the guy did live in Canada, by all accounts, and hadn't really threatened me. Also keep in mind, Mitchell somehow had our mailing address and knew exactly where we lived.
Oh, what's going on? Yo, I got kicked.
Though, fast
Who kicked me?
to about 2001. We live in a new house.
I'm doing a solo, you trickers.
Everything unlisted. I'm now 15.
Do a solo.
Yep, you guessed it. A fucking Elf coloring book. Number 12. When I was 9, my parents split up, and my dad rented a house in a pretty isolated part of town, surrounded by woods.
What?
What happened? You randomly got kicked out from the party.
I know, it's crazy. I'm not sure what happened.
It's a ghost.
It's a ghost. Hold up. America, yeah. JJ hasn't been on at all today. Yeah, JJ hasn't been on today. Yeah, I can't join the party. I can't join the party.
Oh.
Angel, you want to do duo by ourselves?
Sure, fine.
I don't like playing with scrubbos.
Hey, put the thing name.
Okay.
Couldn't see any neighbors. It was in a nice area, especially for kids. An old friend of his lived in the basement apartment. He was kind of a weird guy,
Yeah.
super neckbeard, into mystic shit, and hit on my mom constantly when she and my dad were still together. Upstairs, my dad lived with Big Frank, a big teddy bear Viking guy who loved me and my little brother, and Barney, a very religious stagehand
Barney.
who also liked my brother and me a lot. For a while, when my brother and I came to visit, everything was cool. We'd run around into the woods and play games and stay up late and eat junk food. Slowly, I started to feel more and more creeped out whenever we were there. I'd run to my bed after turning the lights out, because every child knows the bed is the only place where you're safe. I constantly felt like there was something there. One night, my brother told me his closet door opened in the middle of the night. We didn't tell Dad, probably because he wasn't very good at listening to us back then, and we knew he couldn't take us seriously. Instead, we told Barney. Barney said he'd felt something evil in the house, and he'd do something about it. When everyone else left the house, Barney sprinkled some holy water around, lit some candles, and said a few prayers. The house felt much less scary when we got back that evening, but it went right back to being creepy and awful by the next weekend. Until Dad moved out 5 years later, we just put up with it and pretended not to be.
What?
My cousin.
Invite your cousin to what?
After we're done with this round.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not gonna bite.
Wi-Fi too, please. Most like.
I guess maybe I guess if I want to.
Scared. It's easy enough to put up with something creepy for a couple days at a time, as long as nothing actually happens. A couple summers ago, I moved in with Dad and Stepmom. He got married a year after moving out of the house. One beautiful evening, we were sitting around playing a game and having a few beers when my stepmom brought up that house and how filthy it was because a bunch of bachelors lived there. We all laughed and talked about the old roommates and wacky things that happened while they lived there. Then I said, growing
I don't like it.
sure that place was haunted or
I don't like it.
He says his closet
Somebody's trying to kill me.
in the middle of the night. I never saw anything weird, but God, that place was creepy. My dad nodded and said, yeah, there was some kind of evil presence there. I never told you kids this, but I was pushed down the stairs a few times while going to the basement for laundry. And there was this one time I went into the kitchen and all our knives were stuck in the ceiling. Number 11. This is the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh my God!
6 or 15 at the time.
My freaking controller!
Everyone knows.
I'm getting it. 3, 2, 1. Ah, boy. How many people in your guys' round? Hey, Angel, how many people in your round? Angel?
Hey, Elizabeth.
Piece of crap.
Those one-hour news pieces on CBS that chronicle large crimes in depth, trafficking, murders, kidnapping, and the like. Basically, a gritty Lifetime special. This one was a typical story. Guy next door that was quiet went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their young daughter. Well, the thing about our house common room...
Now you invite me, bro. I'm in the match.
...was a large glass door on a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it unless you have the backlight on. We did not. The front door is on the other side of the room with a small entryway. This is a solid door. You cannot see what is beyond it, with a closed door on the outside of it. 45 minutes into the show, they're talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and bam, 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 front door bangs like crazy. We jump the fuck up and scream like banshees. Dead silence now.
Scream like banshees.
The lights on in the house are the kitchen down the hall from the common room we are in, and the light from the TV.
Angel, where are we going? I'm gonna scream like a banshee. We start thinking something on the porch, like planters in a rocking chair out there. I'ma scream like a banshee. This was West Texas. Crazy strong winds out that way. Well, a minute of silence and us holding each other post-adrenaline overdose passes. Just when we're about to declare everything is safe, we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Fuck. Someone had to open that door to be able to bang on the front door like that. We were both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor where we had been watching TV. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which made a mildly loud thunk. Now it's just us in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed with me frozen and my sister still crouched by the now off TV. But we kept making eye contact, then looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. We hear and I see the back door knob turn. It was locked on the knob, but not deadbolted. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound. We even held our breath. Then bam, 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 bam! Loud as hell, someone is trying to force the door open just by jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently. My sister flips her shit and screams bloody murder. I'm still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can in front of it. Thankfully, she had remembered the phone. One of those I'm gonna take a fat crap, shove my mic into it, and then snip it.
We still had to direct dial the sheriff there, and in her panic didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends, and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into her house and needs to get there right fucking now. The profanity sticks out here more than anything else. Who knows? Young brain. I am curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friends and her parents driving up to the house. We did not find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening, but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like this has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure we never forgot to lock the door after that. Number 10. About 4 years ago, I was sleeping and woke up randomly to see a person standing next to my bed. This person was clearly female, but very petite, perhaps a teenager or just tiny in stature. She was facing away from me and had her shoulder cocked up to her cheek, like the way you sometimes see people holding phones. Her hair was in a low ponytail. There was nothing surreal or ghostly about her. She appeared exactly as you would imagine a person would if you were to waken in a dark room, somewhat illuminated by moonlight. There was no mistaking the fact that someone was standing only a couple of feet away from my bed. I jolted upright immediately. Shock is putting it mildly. I remember my heart was pounding, pounding, pounding. The worst part about it was, she heard me sit up and reacted, turning her crooked head around to face me, as if equally surprised to see me as I was her. I was so scared I actually closed my eyes, like they do in movies, thinking that when I opened them, she'd be gone, and I would chalk it up to some kind of half-dreaming state. Nope. She was still there, staring at me. I started to fumble for the lamp on my nightstand. It felt like goddamn forever. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. I was so nervous that the noise would further prompt her to come towards me, or something. When I finally switched it on, she was gone.
Angel, why are you not helping?
Me and my friends were driving home from a show we all went to. This was about 7 years ago or
I'm gonna go play solo.
Cerritos area. There's an elementary school there. I think on 108.
I'll play with you, but you have to help me.
What it's called. Anyway, we drove by a local elementary school. All of us joking and laughing or whatever 16-year-olds do. And my friends
No, I'm gonna play it with you.
Playground in the school screamed and refused to talk to anyone for a few hours. We asked her what was wrong, what she saw, what happened, but nothing would make her tell us. We all thought she saw someone on the playground or a dead body or something. All of us knew that she was seriously spooked. As backstory, I should add that she's sensitive to paranormal happenings. I should also add that I don't really believe in ghosts or the like, but whatever. She would have doors fly open at her old house, clothes hangers fly off the rail, cups fall over and then right themselves multiple times. Just crazy shit. Anyway, she eventually told her boyfriend what she had seen. She said she had briefly seen a bunch of blood-covered people walking around the playground aimlessly. I immediately started blaming exhaustion, as it was around 2 a.m. when we drove by. We looked it up later, and it turns out a plane had crashed into the school in the late 80s, and a lot of people had died. Number 8. I worked in a nursing home as an aide in the hospice unit. One night, I had 3 patients trying to die, and my job was to ensure that they were comfortable. The girls that worked the floor with me at night were awesome. We would always try to make each other laugh and get through the night as best as we could. I was known for scaring girls. Sometimes I'd hide in the closet of a room where someone had recently died. Their bodies and belongings were long gone in the empty room, and I'd press the call light and wait. The girls would come in and hastily shut it off, but I'd always jump out and scare the shit out of them. One night, I was in the nurse's station filling out a report since I had to give a patient some narcotics when an aide rushed in. She swore that she saw my shadow on the wall as if I was hiding, trying to scare her. But then she heard me laugh in the nurse's station. I decided to check it out since there wasn't supposed to be anyone on that floor. As I walked over to the wall, I stood where the light would have created my shadow, and there was nothing. I laughed it off until the CNA started shrieking, and I turned around and a shadow seamlessly rose up to the wall from the ground out of nothing. I just stared at it and said, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, is that the best you got?" and walked back to the nursing station. A while later, I had to do rounds. As I walked towards a patient's room, I heard 3 knocks on the door that led outside to the patio by their room, and I saw an older gentleman dressed in all black. I couldn't let him in because I didn't have the access code, so I told him to hold on for a moment and I would get the nurse to let him in. When she and I returned to the door, he was gone. She went outside and we couldn't find him, so I continued to the patient's room to check on him. Blood everywhere, and the patient is on the floor bleeding. He had tried to get up, it appears, and flopped around a bit in his blood trying to get up. The nurse lifted him back into the bed and we cleaned him up. There was nothing else we could do as he was DNR besides make sure he was comfortable. I went to my next patient's room and bam, dead. He had suddenly stopped breathing. I rushed to get the nurse and pulled his file. DNR also.
Alright, what's up?
Called the
Alright, let's
morgue
go.
and his family.
Let's go kill these guys.
His body with an aid.
I don't have an air. I don't have an air.
Patient that fell. Vitals every 15 minutes for
Nice.
a non-witness fall. And he's dead. I get that.
I have enough. Let's go.
She's frustrated because
I want to
this
find
takes
these guys
2
and kill
aides
them.
off her floor to care for the deceased and lots of paperwork for her. As I'm walking down the hall for
What?
linens, I see the old man I originally saw outside walking past the nurse's station, and he whispered,
Oh, get him!
"Jack Maya, then I'm done for the night. Just one more." I jumped
I know there's
because
somebody
his
behind you.
whispers were so
Here, get into here. Get into
I
here.
ran to the direction he was going. A patient's room door slammed shut. When I ran in, she looked directly at me and took her last breath.
Wow. Oh my. Hey. Nate. Nathan. Nate. Nate.
Angel,
What?
I'm gonna have to go because I've been playing on this for hella long.
Okay.
Bye, Daddy.
Bye. Bye, Jeffrey.
Dude! Angel! My mic stopped working! My mic stopped working! Hold up, hold up. Angel. Angel, can you hear me? Dude. But if I put it in a certain position, the thing is, when you play with the axle, like the next time you're gonna use it, you have to, yeah, it's until it starts making noise. I might have moved it, and it caused it to stop moving. Good thing I fixed it. No, I fixed it. I was like, oh, jeez. All right, you wanna play?
Come on, dude.
Finish this match?
Hey, we're still alive, just saying.
Yeah.
Dude,
Dad, I'm gonna play this last one. I'm gonna play this last one, Dad.
What are you doing? What is happening now?
No, my dad told me to stop playing, but I was like, I need to finish this last one, and he was like, okay, fine. So, hopefully we don't lose. Oh, snap. Watch out, watch out, watch out. Oh, jeez. Yeah, they're coming behind us. Oh, I can see them. Oh, please. Oh, please, jeez. I'm running. Yeah, we're probably not gonna last long. I'll talk to you, Angel. Angel, I'll talk about it at school, okay?
Okay.
Well, good thing I fixed it. At least I know.